Ladies and gentlemen, today, voice messages. We are here. We're going to talk about what you want to talk about. So on my Speak Pipe, you can submit a question, submit a thought, however you want to do it, and I will answer live and in color. If you want to leave your own message, which I'm sure you do after the week one, after the Carolina Panthers game in the Superdome, if you do, follow the link below. The link below in the video description will take you to Speak Pipe. I think you could use a phone or a microphone or whatever to leave your voicemail, and then I will do it. So let's go ahead and get into it. The Meat Father is up next. What an amazing name. We have another guy. Is it the Girth Father or Girth something? He always comments. Girthquake. That's it. We have Girthquake. He always comments. We have Girthquake and Meat Father. Greatest tag team ever. Tag team champions. Imagine you're walking down to the wrestling ring, and who's your opponent? So I got to face Girthquake and Meat Father.
Hey, James, it's the Meat Father from Jersey. Big Saints fan for as long as I can remember. Are we taking the Saints week one in our survivor pool? That's all I got for you.
Hey, Meat Father. My man. Yes, we are. So if you don't know what a survivor pool is, so Survivor, so much fun. It is so much fun. You have the entire NFL schedule, and you can pick a team to just win each week, not against the spread, just win the game. And you can only pick that team once. And the last one standing wins the pot. Circa, you'll always see me wearing a Circa shirt and a Circa hat. Circa has the biggest Survivor contest in the world. I think it's like 12, maybe $13 million this year. DraftKings has a bunch of Survivor pools. $1, $5, $10, $50, $100. I'm in a bunch. I'm in a bunch of DraftKings pools. I made it all the way, I think, to week 14 last year. What a ride. Oh, my God. I'll tell you the game I lost. I lost Jacksonville against Cincinnati with Jake Browning. In Jacksonville, Jake Browning beat on Monday Night Football. Trevor Lawrence rolled his ankle, hurt his ankle. I think they lost in overtime. Absolutely brutal. Tough, man. I was like three. I think it was week 14. Someone double check me, but I was close to a big time payday for sure. So this year, yeah, Survivor's going on. I'm in a ton of pools. And right now I have 15 entries. And right now, all 15 entries are on the New Orleans Saints. Now, it might change. I have until kickoff. But right now, I'd go with the Saints. And I'll tell you why. Because it is kind of cute to use the Saints. Because obviously, a lot of people want to use the Bengals. Bengals are playing the Patriots. But the Saints, this is... Because you got to use basically 20 teams. Because you got to think 17 weeks or whatever. So you got to use a bunch of teams. Finding a way to use teams that aren't very popular is you got to do it. This is no doubt about it, this is the best time to use the Saints out of the entire year. This is the best time. So I am planning on using the Saints. If you have multiple entries, I would do 90% of the entries on the Saints and then one entry on the Bengals if you want to play it safe. But I am saying to go for the Saints. I think it's a smash spot for the Saints. I think it's very advantageous of when they're getting the Panthers and versus when the Panthers are getting them. It's the least amount that any team has on this offense. After this game, they'll be able to game plan a little bit more, but no one has any clue what the Saints offense is going to look like. Carolina cannot prepare for it. Carolina has a new green dot linebacker, so the person who's communicating the defense is brand spanking new. To add even more confusion, they have 3 new offensive linemen. They have 2 new wide receivers. Bryce Young only played 1 possession in the preseason, so you got to figure the Panthers are kind of relatively rusty. Or not rusty, but they just got to kind of get used to each other. So there's a lot of factors of why I love the Saints. And then you may say, the Saints can't prepare for the Panthers offense. Au contraire. The Panthers offense is just the Buccaneers from last year, right? So the Saints defense is familiar with what this offense will look like. They are familiar with Canales, and they are familiar with all that. So, yeah, unbelievable question. 100%. Saints are my survivor pick for this week. I mean, I just love it. I love the spot. I know you don't want to play divisional games, but being able to use the Saints, get them off the board, and then if the Saints win, like you're begging for the Broncos to beat Seattle, and you're begging for the Patriots to beat the Bengals, because then like I would guess 70+% are going to be on the Bengals. Imagine if the Bengals drop that game and all of a sudden 80% of your pool gets taken out. I mean, you could win this thing by week 5. So yeah, great question, Meat Father. I'll try and do a Survivor video once a week, as long as I'm in it, at least, just kind of breaking down how I'm looking at the board, things like that. Because as Survivor ticks up, it is very exciting. But make sure you're also following me on Twitter, Instagram. I'll also release some stuff there too. So Jeremy Gates.
What's up, big dog? Hey, respect the grind and love the channel. Here's my question. What is the one thing...
Let me get back here. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. The grind is real. Thank you for that. I mean, we are pumping out content every single day, multiple videos a day, and it ain't stopping. I'll tell you this right now. I really think this is it. This is the season. This is when we really explode here. And my goal is to be the number one most watched, most listened to, whatever, however you want to phrase it, channel in New Orleans sports media, counting everyone. I will be at the tippy top. That's the goal. I'm not hiding it from anybody. I think we have the best channel out there, the best content out there, and we're gunning for number one. We are going to be number one. That is the goal. And in order for that to happen, the grind cannot stop.
Here's my question. What is the one thing that the Saints can do this season to reverse the national media narrative? I couldn't really care any less, but I'm just curious as to what you think. Respect the grind. I love the channel. Who dat?
Who dat? Win. Win, and more importantly, win the division. I think if we win the division, if we win 10 games, win the division, host a playoff game, I think that would kind of silence the narrative. Because right now the narrative is all backed by this idea that Dennis Allen and Derek Carr cannot win. That's the narrative. And you see it in Tampa where, Todd Bowles, he has the division titles, and even though Tampa really hasn't done that much record-wise better than the Saints, he kind of gets away with it because he's got these division titles. So, but at the same time, we can't win 8 games. We can't win 8 games, win the division that way, and everything's going to go away. I think the narrative would change simply if we win 10 games, win the division. Another way it could fix itself is if we played exciting style of football. And this is a little bit more relative, but the Saints, for some reason, are branded as like a super boring team, even though no one has any clue what this offense will look like. So if we come out there and we're putting up a lot of points and we're scoring, 28 points a game, 30 points a game, something like that for a run there, and Derek Carr's lighting it up, and we kind of look a little bit like the Saints of old, I think people will quickly remove the boring tag from the Saints. Great question. I very knee-jerk, very boring. These analysts, man, I'm telling you, they don't watch the games. Like these big, you can tell. The big, which blows my mind, because it's like, if all I had to do was cover the NFL, I would watch every game in real time, no problem. And then I would more than likely watch every game again. I would probably watch every game twice, and then I would also probably go into all 22s and do that. I mean, it just blows my mind that a lot of these guys and girls, their job is to cover the NFL, and they can't be asked to watch the games. It's crazy. I mean, could you imagine? So they don't watch the games, and that's why they label. You see these lazy narratives come out, like the Saints are boring, or Derek Carr can't win, or Dennis Allen can't win, and then you look around, and you're like, well, Raheem Morris can't win. Well, Todd Bowles can't win. Well, Kirk Cousins, it's not like he's winning playoff games all over the place. He's 1-4 in his career. What's going on here, right? So, but great question. Thank you very much for the question. Austin is up next.
Hey, I'm a huge fan of the show, and I was coming across.
I really appreciate that.
This, I was thinking back, because I know with the whole head coach thing, he obviously, Dennis Allen's on the hot seat, but I know bringing Clint Kubiak to the offense was a key thing for the offense
Yeah.
because Pete Carmichael is not the guy we all knew, just a yes man.
Yep.
In what way would it be possible, do you think you see him being the head coach after next year? I can't believe they go 9-8 again or somehow miss the playoffs would be the most realistic way. But also, if you would have to replace the defensive play caller, couldn't they just get the Minnesota
Brian Flores.
DC, Brian Flores to the team to replace that? Or
Theoretically.
possibly look at elsewhere. That could be a decent replacement. I just got a feeling that offense, a minded head coach would probably be the best scenario for them in the future. Because to be honest, this year is not a Super Bowl year. This is more, I feel like it's going to set us up for basically the future where the Saints are going to look like 2 to 8 years down the line, what they're going to be like, if they're going to be either still trying to retool or just in a rebuild and trying to go back at it. I just want your opinion on it. And if Clint does get it, I just have a feeling that why would he come to New Orleans?
Okay, so I think a minute 30 the max. I never thought about that. Maybe a minute 30 is the max, and then it cuts off. But okay, so we've talked about this a few different times, and there's a bunch of questions in this one questionception. So I'll try and answer them kind of one at a time. Allen, what could keep him as the head coach is if, one, the defense is good. 9-8 with a good defense, I think Allen stays. 7 wins, 8 wins, 6 wins, I think he's probably on the chopping block. But if you fire Allen, okay, let's take it like this. If you fire Allen, there has to be a reason. All right, so the most obvious reason would be that the Saints don't win games. Okay, well then you have to ask yourself, like, how are they not winning games? Are they getting blown out of the building? Is the defense bad? If they have the number 1 ranked defense and they lose games and they go 7-10, it would be hard to say that Allen should go, right? Because he's a defensive coach. And I've seen a lot of people say like Allen should have done this in the offense, and Allen should have done this with Carmichael last year. It's not his expertise. Even somebody like Sean Payton, who we all agree is one of the best coaches of the last 20 years, when Sean Payton had a bad defense, he went 7-9 with peak Drew Brees. Dennis Allen, Dennis Allen did that with Trevor Siemian or Andy Dalton and half of Jameis Winston, and not all coaches just win. And coaches sometimes, like in Sean Payton's case and Dennis Allen's case, they are specialists. Dennis Allen is a specialist. Sean Payton was a specialist. When Sean Payton had those bad defenses and had his hands on the defense, we saw what happened. How do you have Sean Payton and Drew Brees and you go 7-9, 3 straight seasons? Now think about this. Think about if during that time period or right after that, we would have said, you know what? I've seen enough. Get Sean Payton the hell out of here. Trade Drew Brees. He can't win. He's ass. Well, it's like that didn't happen because they already had a little bit of built up goodwill. But it's harder in today's NFL. It's harder for a head coach. I mean, you got to be a special head coach to truly impact both sides of the ball. Head coaches to me are one of two things. One, they're either a specialist and they dominate that side of the ball and they expect their coordinators to dominate the other side of the ball. People like that are Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, Sean Payton, even Dennis Allen, where they're laser focused on one thing. The other style of head coach is more of like an organizer and more of a guy who's the man manager. He's the rah-rah motivator, but he's not the X's and O's guy. And so he's going to rely on his coordinators to do both sides of the ball. So he's not a specialist in either. These kind of coaches are like Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's he's not drawing up X's and O's for the defense. He's not drawing up X's and O's for the offense. He is there to set a culture, be a man manager, but he needs Ben Johnson to do what he does. Houston, good example. DeMeco Ryans, defensive genius, right? Defensive coach. But he relies on Bobby Slowick to have the offense figured out. Okay. So I'm not as down on Allen as a lot of people because I see him for what he is. I look at him and I look at the defense. If the offense is struggling like it was last year, I'm not looking at Allen to fix that. I know he can't fix that. If just like when the Saints defense was bad, we didn't look to Peyton to fix that. If the Rams defense is bad, I'm not looking to Sean McVay to fix that, right? They have other guys to do that. Okay. So now let's say we did fire Allen. Okay. Now I'm going to replay part of this message and hit on it.
The defensive play caller.
Let's see.
Couldn't they just get the minutes possible? Do you think you see him being the head coach? In what way would it be possible? Do you think you see him being this way? But also, if you would have to replace the defensive play caller, couldn't they just get Brian Flores to be a decent replacement? I just got a feeling that offensive-minded head coach would probably be the best scenario for them in the future.
Okay, there you go. That's the part I wanted to hear. So then he says that an offensive-minded head coach would be the best for the Saints in the future. Okay, well, now we're in a unique Sudoku puzzle where if you fire Allen, it means the team probably sucks. If the team sucks, then Clint Kubiak and his offensive staff isn't looking great, right? So you don't want to make him the head coach because if the team sucks, you're not that confident in him. And then if you bring in an offensive coach, well, you're definitely going to get rid of Kubiak and them because the offensive head coach is going to bring in his own staff. But if you need a new head coach, that means you fired Allen. That means you don't have your defensive staff. The whole problem we're in right now is because we promoted Dennis Allen from within to replace Sean Payton instead of replacing Sean Payton with an offensive guy. Because I guess Loomis thought that the Sean Payton disciples like Pete Carmichael and Ronald Curry could just kind of keep the train moving. Obviously wasn't the case. So once Allen was already the head coach and we needed to fix the offense, we couldn't go get an offensive head coach, then you got to get a coordinator. And that's much more difficult. So that's kind of the situation we're in now. If we would have, when Peyton left, if we would have hired an offensive head coach and kept Allen as the DC, it'd be a much better situation. But Loomis didn't want to go externally. He wanted to promote from within. And then as far as the Flores thing, I like Brian Flores. He's just a blitz-happy defensive coordinator. The thing with that is that you're asking him to make a lateral move. So you're asking him, hey, you're the DC in Minnesota, come be the DC in New Orleans. And it's like, why? Why would he do that? Why would he move from Minnesota to New Orleans to just do the same thing? Very rarely do you see those like lateral moves. Usually you see either a demotion or a promotion. You either see a head coach become a coordinator or a coordinator become a head coach, or rare unless it's a head coach. Head coaches do kind of move around, but rarely do you see just like the OC of blank team on his own accord leaves to go be the OC of another team. And so it'd be hard to imagine firing Allen, hiring Flores as the DC, but then also hiring a head coach. And then you wouldn't just hire Flores to be the head coach, because then why would you fire Allen, right? So it's a tricky puzzle with the coaches. Chris, you're up next. Or CJ, excuse me. CJ, you're up next.
Hey, James. Hope you're doing good. I love your channel. I do think it's crazy that fans are absolutely shitting on DA for Jake Haener being QB2. Before the depth chart came out, he literally said that whoever's QB2 doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. A lot of stuff fans get super, and not just fans, but just like the media members get wrapped up in. And partly it's because of this, it's because of this 24-hour news cycle. That's the problem with a lot of this stuff. It's like, okay, we got to fill time. How are we going to fill time? What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about backup quarterbacks. We're going to talk about rookie practice squad. We're going to cover rookie minicamp. All that stuff. And then all of a sudden, these storylines that come out that really don't matter. I mean, yeah, whoever's quarterback too, who cares? Like the depth chart doesn't matter at all. It's the same with starters. Like it doesn't. I don't care if Taysom is listed as a tight end. We know what he's going to do. He's going to play all these other different positions. So, Taysom being listed as a quarterback or a fullback or a tight end doesn't matter to me at all. Haener being 2 or 3, Rattler being 2 or 3 doesn't matter to me at all. Now, I've gone on record saying I think Rattler's better, but I would play Haener if Carr got hurt, because I wouldn't want to risk Rattler's development. I would rather just kind of throw Haener out there. He does have a little more experience. So, yeah, I think depth chart and things like that are depth chart, draft picks, salary cap, those are all things that get blown up way more than they should, for sure. I mean, they very rarely, like, did any of those things matter.
They're both going to be, Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener are going to both develop. They're both going to battle.
And by draft picks, I mean like trading draft picks. They very rarely is like a third round pick that's a part of some deal, really a big deal.
Throughout the season. And then they're going to, find out that way. That's what I got from it. So, but the fans are just coming back like, oh, that's dumb. They should already know. They're just trying to protect Derek Carr. He's just trying to protect Carr from Spencer Rattler getting his job. And honestly, I think that's ridiculous to say. Yeah, I think that's absolutely dumb because regardless, Carr is still going to have a job.
Well, the thing about that too is like the idea that like Rattler's still there. So if Rattler is going to take Carr's job, he will do it from third string or backup because all the reps he's getting in practice, the reps he's getting in preseason, the reps he's getting in training camp, what he's doing in the film room, what he's doing day to day, like all that's still seen. And that's another misconception is that people think the only way for a player to be seen is on the field, like during the games. That was the Trey Lance fallacy, where I had a lot of people telling me, like, well, the 49ers have only seen Trey Lance throw the ball 27 times. How do they know? It's like, brother, you don't think that, like, you think the only time he is seen by his coaches is during game day? You ever heard of practice? Like, you ever heard of any of that? Like, think about if y'all played high school sports or whatever. Think about all of the reps you had in practice. Those reps are what made the decision of who's playing during the game. Once the game happened, like it's already happening, right? And then if something happens in the game, you may go back to practice and then see like, okay, well now we'll see some more practice reps, but we'll look at it from a different view. Same thing's in the NFL. So yeah, I mean, Haener and Rattler are going to do their thing, and regardless of like who has the number 2 and who has the number 3 next to them on the little sheet that gets printed out before the game.
He would have to be absolutely trash next year, and if he's absolutely trash, then our offense is going to get fired, and then pretty much there's going to be no developing happening.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, CJ's seeing things clear. If Carr is horrific, then the offense is horrific. If the offense is horrific, the Saints are horrific. If the Saints are horrific, they're all getting fired, bringing in new people. Those new people didn't draft Rattler or Haener and won't develop either one of them. And that's more than likely we have a top 10 pick. And then we would probably draft a quarterback. And then that would be it. Like, so it is complicated, and that is the business. That is kind of how the NFL churns. Like the NFL, that happens all the time where this guy looks like he's the quarterback of the future. This, and this happens. All of a sudden, Quinn Ewers is the 7th overall pick by the New Orleans Saints, and he's the starter. And then Rattler and Haener are somewhere else. Happens all the time. So yeah, you're seeing things clear, CJ.
At all. But again, I think it's just crazy, and the fact of that people are completely ignoring Clint Kubiak, because honestly, it could have been Kubiak's decision. It really could have been Kubiak's decision on like, yep, Jake Haener, or honestly, it could have just been a randomizer, because again, DA said that it's not going to matter. So
I think I think with those kind of things, there's a bigger conversation. It's not as easy as, I always use the Madden comparison. It's not as easy as like 79 overall, 76 overall, 74 overall. You have to factor in like, okay, what do we think? And this is kind of where the front office and Allen, this is where you have the conversation of like man management and roster building, which is a whole different side of the front office. But you have to decide what is better for the development of Rattler, if that is your plan. So do we want him as the number 2, or do we want to keep him at 3 and make him prove it? Make it however you psychologically you do it. You could say like, well, if we keep him at 3, then he's going to feel like that chip on his shoulder, which we like. We want him to develop with that chip on his shoulder, whatever. You may think, well, if we put him at 2 already, he may get lax. I mean, I'm just making this stuff up. But those conversations do come into play. And, I think the Patriots are going through that right now with Drake May, where they're probably thinking like, we can't. This is the hardest part of our schedule. Our offensive line sucks. Yeah, he probably is better than Jacoby Brissett, but psychologically, like it would probably do more damage to play him than not. I think the Vikings, this is a conspiracy theory completely created by me, but I think the Vikings probably told J.J. McCarthy, like, look, if we really wanted to, or they probably didn't tell him this, they probably had this conversation in the front office and said, if we really pushed, McCarthy would be available in probably a couple months here. but why risk his knee? Why force him to play? Like, let's just announce he's out for the season. That way there's no rush on him. There's no pressure on him, and he can take way more time than he needs to develop and get his knee healthy. Because a meniscus is a couple months, right? Like, I know people that tore their meniscus and were back. Certainly it's not a year-long injury. So it's not an ACL. So I think the front office does make decisions like that more than people believe.
He could have asked the gardener outside, like, hey, who do you want to be QB2? He could be like, Jake Haener. Regardless, it doesn't matter because their hope is that Derek Carr is going to play throughout the season and he's going to be good.
Yeah.
So I think fans really need to calm down on DA and stop acting like he is the most absolutely trash head coach. When realistically, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this minute 30 is cooking people. So I didn't even realize that minute 30 was a thing until just now. But so I guess 90 seconds is. But yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, a lot of the times, fantasy football, Madden, that like mentality bleeds into reality when that's not really how it works. Don't forget, after the game, during the game, whenever, fill this sucker up. I want to see a ton of calls. I want to hear what you have to think or what you have to say or what you think about the game. I'll try and find a way to do like a more normal voicemail system. This was just one of the first things I found. It works great, but I want to find a way like people to call in. We could do like a live show kind of thing during road games. So I'll figure that out. But thank you very much. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you in the next video.